Hey everybody, this is Inarra Griffyn, and I'm having an amazing conversation with my friend Maria Aleandra today. And we are having a conversation about a very difficult subject that we want to be very straight with. And this is a crowdfunder, so we're actually giving you straight up what she's dealing with. I'm her friend. I'm also her coach, and I felt that I wanted to do an intervention at this point, really, and bring you into a crowdfunding situation. So that's straight up, so people understand. But really, the main reason I brought this up is because your partner Jules has ALS.
Mhm.
Do you want to tell us what that stands for?
Sure. So ALS stands for amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It's also known as MND or motor neuron disease in Australia and other countries. So just putting that out there. Um, it's a disease with no known cure. It's a disease that just ravages the bodies. Basically, the neurons, stop sending the right information to the muscles. So then the muscles begin to atrophy, and it's a um, very rapidly progressing disease. If you know anybody who has ALS, you will understand the incredibly difficult nature of this. And it's also a disease that also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. Some might recognize it by that. But yeah, um, that's what it's called.
And that was a cat coming in through a cat flap, that noise, who will be up on the table any minute. So, welcome Phoenix to the conversation. Here we go.
Hello, Phoenix.
um, so, the thing that I think people need to understand, when I suggested that we do a crowdfunder, your immediate response was to go, "Oh, we can handle it. It's okay. I
Mhm.
don't need the help. I'm all right. I got this," kind of
Yeah.
thing, because that's who you are, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You,
I'm like so nervous about this like nervous and very in a vulnerable space here because the idea of receiving the help and the care is difficult. It challenges like all these um points of within me that say that I can do this on my own, and you know uh, so it's yes, I was like not feeling fully worthy. And Jules as well is something we've both moved through. And the fact is that um, this is a journey that really does require a lot of help. Like it's a journey that's very much defined in terms of help and care and being open to helping and caring. Um, and particularly in the intimacy of our relationship, right? As husband and wife, like he basically relies on being receiving care, and I'm here to you know be that for him. So there's this whole dynamic of giving and receiving that is very much a part of, I think, what this like horrible condition can show us in some way. But yeah, when you mentioned it, I was like, yeah, no, I'm gonna go over there, and just like every excuse in the book came like flooding in, and I'm breathing through it because I also know how potent this is for so many reasons. So yeah.
well, a bit of a backdrop about myself is that I have done a fundraiser for my ex-husband, a very dear friend of mine who we've always been so connected. We just grew like that, but we're really very good friends. And he had throat cancer last year. We knew that the journey that he was on at that time would require him to have, he would not be able to speak at a certain point. He wouldn't be able to eat through his mouth and throat. To have the radiation treatment, he had to have a stomach feeder apparatus inserted surgically for 3 months. And so I also made the audacious offer to him. I said, "You can't work." I mean, the first thing that happened when he was diagnosed was this was a freak out about well, how do I manage this? And what do I do with that? And, and then the bills. And, it was like very reasonable conversation for people to freak out about how are they going to bring in the money. And how this came about in between you and I was because I was coaching you on a certain part of your big vision going out into the world, because we know you've got an epic journey ahead of you, being a leader, I would say a medicine woman of great merit and caliber. And then you're concerned about this, well, how do I get my next big message off the ground? And I'm going, but you haven't got any bandwidth for this. That's here, but this is ALS. And I want to talk a little bit about, so what happened with my ex-husband was, once he got in the receiving space and I was able to say, this was during COVID as well, right? So I had to be his bubble. I had to be with him. We had one other person who was in close contact because their immune system is just screwed up through the radiation. He then could breathe, because basically we were doing things like, we had a WhatsApp group, which we're going to create also for Jules and you. And when he couldn't speak and couldn't eat, and I was going around and seeing him, I mean, at the worst state, the worst, when the sides of cancer that people don't want you to see. And I said to him, please, can we show this? Can we show the bits where you're feeding yourself through a stomach tube, what that looks like, when you're emaciated, when it's not all of this kind of trying to be like, hey, I got this thing, I'm, fighting a good fight. And what was amazing was the other side of it, which was that when he couldn't speak and when he was at the lowest, and I mean crying on the floor at times because it was so hard, he would get a text from somebody who would just be writing this, I feel very emotional, this from the heart, gorgeous, deep connected piece of poetry. And that would get him through the next step, right? So yes, there was the money that we got, which helped him not work for this whole period of time, which meant that he could focus on his well-being. And guess what? It's a happy ending in his case, because he recovered from it and hasn't gone in, there's no remission, or sorry, he is in remission. There's no recurrence. And then he met the love of his life. And, so there's a whole other chapter after that. But that bit was really, really, really freaking hard, right? And ugly. And so I want to talk a bit about this. Like, when you have a 5-year-old son, Skylar, it's hard enough being a mum with a 5-year-old, right? Full on age of being parents. And in your experience, what would you say when you met Jules and you got together with him? How long has your relationship been? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. So we met back in May 2010. He was my birthday present, as I met at my friends were throwing me a party at a karaoke bar. And one of my friends from work happened to invite this guy that he knew. And, just then we saw each other, and we didn't even speak that much that night, which was really cool. So we danced and we sang at one point together. And then at the end of the night, he asked for my number. And right away I knew that he was so special. And that was May 2010, and we got married December 2012. So this December it'll be our 10-year anniversary. And we, my husband is 37. I'm 42. We're young. Life is ahead of us. There's so many things to plan. And here we are with Skylar wasn't even 3 yet when the first time we heard from a neurologist that it could be ALS was in March 2020, right? When everybody was going into lockdown here. And the year prior, Jules had some like issues on his shoulder and he'd gone to see somebody, but nothing had really come up until it started to show up in his hand. And with his thumb specifically, his right thumb, and he went to a hand doctor, and the guy scared the bejesus out of him because he was like, he literally said, I don't think I can help you with your hands. I think what you have is ALS, which I don't know, that was a very responsible thing to say at that point, but it then catalyzed us into, okay, well, he got us in touch with the neurologist. And at that time, obviously it was difficult to get anything, but it happened. And I remember leaving that office and there was no confirmation at that point, but the neurologist was like, we'd already read a little bit into it, and I said, we're preparing ourselves to understand, like, if this is it, then what that means. And I remember leaving that office that day, holding hands and just looking at each other like, oh my, like, just holding each other with this complete sense of unknown and uncertainty and pain, and then getting in the car and driving home. And there's so many things that flood into your heart and your head, because when you're dealing with something like this, it is just some of the facts you're looking at. On average, people survive between 2 to 5 years with ALS. It varies depending on where the ALS first shows up in your body. For some people, it's their arms. That's the case with Jules. For some, it's their legs. For some, it's their throat. They have bulbar ALS, which progresses a lot faster. In his case, because it's in the arms, it tends to have a slower progression, but that's in the scope of just a handful of years. There are, 2 medications that have been approved by the FDA for like 10 years at this point that basically can extend your life for 3 months. That's like, he's taking one of them. He's also on a trial drug, but this is a disease that's very much in the realm of such an unknown. The doctors, there's very little we know except how quickly it moves. And so, we began to, now that we had this awareness of what we were dealing with, we, first, him and I were able to, and I think also the whole COVID thing was a blessing and a curse for us, because a blessing in the sense that it allowed us to create this like cocoon between the 3 of us, him and I and Skylar, and particularly for Jules and I to understand, okay, as a couple, how we wanted to move through this and to solidify our own love for each other and our commitment to each other. Because since then, I mean, we're talking about, and then he saw some other specialists that in like mid-May gave more of a confirmation. Now, ALS is not a disease that has a specific test that you confirm this is what it is. They basically just give a lot of other tests that eliminate other possibilities, but they'll give you the prognosis of, we're pretty sure this is what it is. And, I've seen my husband's body just transform before my eyes. I've become his hands. I've become his support. I've become, in all the physical ways and emotional ways. It's completely devastating.
I want to ask you a bit about that. And
Yeah.
this is like the real straight end of the stick, if you like. So within 2 years, because he's had it for 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
this gorgeous man, what is the difference? I know you now have to feed him. He can't use his arms. Is that
Yeah,
right?
I've been feeding Jules since 2020 is when I started feeding him, because since he lost pretty immediately the ability to move he has very little movement, but like no there's no coordination, it's like there's just like it's like a rag doll. So I started feeding him in 2020. I've been feeding him for a while now. So
Well, that's 2 years.
feeding, yeah. So
Yeah.
feeding, bathing, brushing his teeth, combing his hair, putting on his deodorant, anything and everything that a person does with their hands, I've become his hands. And we've gone through so many, it's like backwards milestones of moments when he's no longer able to do certain things. And um you dread each one, and then they arrive and it's okay, then we move through the next. So the toll that it takes, um emotionally and mentally, is so profound, because there is just such a, it's so taxing on so many levels, um because you're dealing with, the I'll speak from, for myself, like the carrying of my, my lover, my best friend, I adore my husband. It's a love that, it's, yeah. And so to care for him, so all the physicality of what that entails, while I'm also caring for my son, and you know hopefully showing him a, he already, there's no normal in his childhood.
Yeah.
And we can think, okay, well, what's normal anyway? But imagine what it must be like for him to see this. And my son is super resilient and brave and strong, and you know I trust in my heart and in my soul, and I know that he came equipped to also move, be here for this.
Yeah.
um and it's always this balance of making sure that I can give enough, so that these two men that I love so much feel cared for and feel like we have a life where we are thriving and we are experiencing things together. And
And then what about you? And the
and
bit that I came in on is
yeah.
that you are one of the most loving, um, wise, strong, kind people. And you have this karmic reference, which we share, that there are reasons that you chose this relationship and that Skylar chose this path. I get that. A lot of people won't get that, but we are seated in that, and within that, there's still like the carer. Like the journey of the carer is
Yeah.
so grim and underrated, and women often do this task. It just happens to be that you just happen to be a woman at this time, and it happens to be your husband. But women often get this role of the carer because we are so heart based. People assume that's expected. And when we were doing that little moment of coaching about your big idea, which will happen for sure, I
Yeah.
was like, well, what about a different big idea? How about you don't work? How about that? How about that idea? And so that the time that you have, whatever that is, and it's short, you know, and we need to be really clear about that with whoever's watching this. This is one of those mothers of all ailments that we all know about, right? Or some of us might know about it. I know about it because I know that Sam Shepard, a great American playwright and actor who I love, I found out he just disappeared, and that's what happened to him. And there was another equally brilliant British comedian from the 60s and 70s, Dudley Moore, who was just famously funny and a brilliant pianist and all of that. And that's what happened to him. And that, they just disappear. And you just think,
Yeah.
well, what on earth happened to you? So they're brilliant, genius men who I've seen in an example. And I know somebody else whose sister had it in Australia. And the rapidity of it, the swiftness of it is shocking because you just
Yeah.
see a deterioration happening sometimes on a daily basis.
Yes. Very
It's
much so. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
terrifying for the person, but the person, like if you're the one who's got it, there's a certain level that is it's blunt trauma to your heart when you find out what the outcome is. It's not great. You're on a freaking warrior journey. But the carers forgotten in this
Yeah.
process. And for you to be a mum looking after a 5-year-old, and then the bit that you didn't mention is that you wipe his bottom too, and you do things like that, which is
Yeah.
real deep caring at the level
Yeah.
of human to human. You cannot work. You cannot work. Like that has to be your whole focus. And also, possibly, there was another moment we had where you were in resistance to this help. And it was like you wanted it to be a whole thing about the entire ALS community and the entire world. And I was like, no, this is about you. This is about you. Because if
Yeah.
we can do one thing for one person, and also the insights that you can get out, just in our conversation about people understanding what it takes for love, I'm
Yeah.
showing you the way I can show you support and love. You're showing them, your family, and then we're asking you out there to help us on this journey. This one needs support right now, like that. And it's not like in 20 years or when you get the pay packet or whatever. No, it's now. Like
Yeah.
ALS is like a high-speed train. And I'm I had to say to Maria Aleandra before we even got on this, I am going to be blunt about this because people don't get it. It's like, yeah, if you believe happy thoughts and all of this, they do believe happy thoughts and all of that.
Yeah.
They are those people that do everything right. They are those people. But ALS is not, it's a predictable outcome and it's
Mhm.
a short life. And so this woman here, I want her to be able to spend all that time and to get carers in who can do all the heavy lifting, and so that you can have time with your son, so that you can actually have some time for yourself as well, right?
Mhm.
Because you're doing a 24/7
Yeah.
full-on caring role now. And it's going to progress, right? That's kind of what ALS is.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. It's, from the moment, I mean, the moment we wake up and obviously whatever he needs through the night, whether it's, pull my sheets up or help me adjust or, scratching, like, you know, imagine not being able to scratch your eyebrow if it itches. Just the simplest things that we take for granted. Um, waking up in the morning, okay, I'm ready to go to the bathroom, help him up out the bed. He wears his like boot thing to help one of his legs when he's sleeping. So taking that off, walking into the bathroom, taking his, pants down, sitting him down, and waiting, picking him, getting him back up, medicines, coffee, all the things, everything. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I have been there, and I want to continue to be there. Oh,
Yeah.
and
And
it
I think
wears
we
on me.
also, sorry, I
It's
missed
no
that.
that it just it wears. Obviously, it wears on me, and
Exhausting. It's
it is exhausting.
exhausting. It's
Yes,
exhausting.
it is
And
exhausting.
yeah. And it's like you can love somebody to pieces and you can still love them and then it's exhausting. Like you haven't got 1 ounce left for yourself. Not 1 ounce. And then you're also a mum of a 5-year-old who one of the most demanding ages,
Yeah.
full on, baby child, you know. zip, wants to go everywhere and do everything, and then is having to live this sort of contained, experience, because when dad was probably much younger, he was walking around with him and picking him
Yeah.
up and doing all of that.
Yeah.
Now he can't. Um, so I think another thing that would be really helpful is to understand this. You may know these guys, right? And so it'll be an easy thing for you to think, how can you help?
Hmm.
How you can really help is financially. And what I want to be really clear about financially is some people think, oh, I've only got a tiny little bit and that won't help. The accumulation of how this worked with my ex-husband, it was amazing. There were some people putting in a fiver, as we say in England, £5. There were some people putting in thousands of pounds. It was all relative according to
Yeah.
what they could give. But the accumulation, and also not only that, the community, the connection, that then led to later on, because Ulrich is his name, Ulrich is very involved in working with plant medicine circles and some of the Amazonian teachers. So that then inspired him. He had a whole money thing in his family,
Yeah.
which may relate to resistance to receiving and all of this stuff. I
Yeah.
adored his mum. She was just lovely, but she was so cautious and careful about money, and she never felt that she was good enough. She had all of that kind of thing. So Ulrich had always had this money burden from the family coming through. And it was deep confrontation when he was, at the worst state, like had cancer, knew it, had to do this rapid treatment, super aggressive treatment. And so there was no time for his logical brain to pivot into, oh, well, if I could X, Y, and Z. It was like, no, it has to be now. You have to receive. We're going to do this money running thing. I am going to be the one that communicates it because you'd be crap at it, right? And I said that to him. You're terrible. It's like your mother is, oh, we can't mention the money. So I'm
Right.
like that up front with you, because what it then led to him was he did another fundraiser right after his recovery, got involved in a fundraiser for the Honey Queen, who are a tribe of Amazonians that their land had been flooded, and they were keeping all the secrets and special information of all the plants in that area in the center of memory. And so Ulrich then, by seeing what I did with him and all these people, this community, then did it for them. And it was like, then they've just raised a whole bunch of money for the Honey Queen. And so it goes on. It's part of seeing how we can help each other. The other thing I think that's really important here, so it's flat out, we are asking for money. Uh, Absolutely no shame whatsoever in this. Some of the equipment that is required in this fast, short journey is the stuff that will make the difference between like having a tolerable moment or an intolerable moment, right? So
Yes.
some of it is equipment. Um,
Absolutely.
you might want to mention like some of the
Yeah.
prices we're looking at
Yeah,
for
no, I
some.
mean it's estimated that, when a family's dealing with ALS, there's a like minimum $200,000 additional that you need per year um in your life for a whole slew of things. Some of the things I can tell you that I know are very imminent and in our very near future. So my husband will need a specialized chair. Right now, we have a loaner chair from the ALS organization, but he needs to have one, fitted to his body, and that's going to happen in a couple of weeks. That chair alone is over $40,000. Our insurance does cover some of it, but not all. I mean, this is the classic case, especially in the US. So we have to put out of pocket a lot of, a good chunk of change for that. And we want to make sure that will be his source of mobility. I mean, that will be his that is everything. So we'll need a special car for us to be able to transport him in the chair, and so that we have the flexibility to go where we need to go. So we're talking there, the specialized vans are, $80,000. And what we've looked at, obviously, like outfitting the things in the home that we'll need eventually, whether it's Socialized chairs to move him around, beds. Already we've spent a lot of money on different pieces of equipment to support, how his body has been progressing. But the reality is that we are getting to a point now where it's like a whole new threshold of what is required. And like you said, it really does makes it's a big difference, because it's not a, oh, wouldn't it be nice if. It's like, no, these things are needed, they are basic. And having the ability to in whatever way the burden is lessened, gives us a chance to, with the emotional bandwidth that we do have, to continue to love each other as a family and continue to create memories and have those moments where a lot of that is lifted, and then you're left with that love that keeps being seeded, so that my husband spends his that the thing too is, right now he's in a space where he is still, we're able to travel. They're you know very, with huge massive challenges that I undertake, and we're like, all right, let's do it. But with ALS, it's like eventually, you end up immobilized in a bed, and um it doesn't mean you can't continue to have experiences in your life. And we're that kind of people that we have a lot of hope, and we'll keep making beautiful things happen. But for me, I've realized, especially after you opened up this thought, and I was like very resistant to it, and you kept reminding me of, what does it mean to allow and open your heart for others to care? And that really catalyzed something in me very deeply, because that allowing others to care in whatever way it makes sense for them, um, is just so, I mean, it's beautiful. And um, yeah, it, it's, it would make a huge difference in so many ways. Like, I can't even begin to list them out. Um, and for Jules to see that kind of care that pours in, because this is a very isolating disease.
Mm.
You're losing your ability to, move your body, control things. You're asking for help all the time. There's a tendency to feel, like a burden, to feel guilty, to feel like, obviously there's less of you to give to the world. And my husband is the man you went to for anything that was like, the go-to friend, the go-to sibling, like, call and he's there, and was always very physical in his acts of love. Like, his acts of love were always very physical. And so now, shifting that into, okay, well, what does it mean? How do I contribute? How do I, and it can be very, very isolating. And we've seen, and it's just real talk, like, people in your life that you thought would show up a certain way don't have the capacity to. And I understand this is a harsh journey for many people, but
Yeah.
we've had, we've really seen, like, where the love and the care comes in, and where it's just kind of like goes away. So yeah, but for him, I know that having, just knowing, um, and it's hard for him to receive, because again, he's a giver. He's like even more of a giver than me. Um, and for him to see what happens when you do open up and share from that place and allow others to pour their love in, I think will be nothing short of just magical and very moving and very cathartic. So yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, the world is a harsh place, and we live out these patterns of duality. Like, why do some people seem to get it so easy? And
Mm.
I always say because it's their turn. My context for that is I have a whole past life thing that I tap into, and that's my understanding of it, and it
Yeah.
feels super real to me. Um, for some people who are seeing this, that may not be your context, right? So if it's one life and you've got that life, then for me that would be even harder to
Hmm.
accept on some level. But if you're watching this and you really believe this person has that life, that and it's one life, then why don't we humans show the love? And it always feels good to give. It always feels amazing. We work in coaching communities, you and I, in
Hmm.
which the often the description of what people want is millions, right? They want millions. It's always like millions, 8-figure of this and that, 7-figure this and that. We're going to teach you how
Yeah.
to get that. But then if some of those people got hit with ALS, it's like you'd actually just want to feel great.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
millions
yeah.
would go out the
Yeah.
window, right? It would
Yeah.
it's down to this, like having a great life as best you can. We're all going
Yes.
to die, we know that. We don't know
Yes.
how long we have. But for this family,
Yeah.
we can make a massive, massive difference to them. And so I'm asking from my heart to your heart to really help. And I think the other thing that we were talking about is through both of our connections, actually, there's many, many people who have different little coaching packages, and they've got healing packages, and they've got
Hmm.
techniques and experiences which we are going to invite you, if you're one of those, to offer one of your experiences as a trade for money, because what we want is money, and what you might be able to give is your offering, so that somebody who's paying money gets a choice of maybe some experiences that they get back, right?
Hmm.
That way we
Hmm.
can extend it, and at some point we'll probably do a bit of an event online, which would be great.
Yeah.
You will also see on the information that we put up, you'll see a lot to do with Jules and Maria Aleandra. I should say it in a Spanishy way because it rolls better than in English, right? Their life, they're going to have some communication together, so you can see, what an amazing couple they are. And that was why I felt really I wanted to extend in this way. But the bit I can do is you and I are very like-minded in some ways, and I think we could create something magical out of this experience for everybody who's involved. You can bring some of your own magic and add into this pot of this brew of juicy love that can go forward. And so there will be probably an event that we'll put together at some point, but we're rolling with it. Like the minute we talked about this, that was maybe 3 days ago. It was
Hmm.
like, okay, great, we're on, game
Yeah.
on. And the reason for that is who I am for sure. It probably is who you are too. But
Hmm.
it's because ALS is so freaking fast.
Yeah.
And I feel almost like I want to protect you from that when I say that, but I also know about it, and it
Hmm.
is fast. So we
Hmm.
have got to get it going now. So we're going to do this fundraiser. We'll put it up probably by next week or two. And it's just help, like
Hmm.
that. Help any way you possibly can. Let's do this because this will make an enormous difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really will. Yeah. Know that, I guess the last thing I'll say is know that with whatever way you can help, you are multiplying hope and expanding hope and pouring hope and love. Um, but this, I think, this idea that we can expand our breath and, you know, know that we get to support each other. And they say this because it's the role that I get to, it's like it passes, through me to my husband and my son. Um and yeah, and we get to protect also love, and we get to protect what it means to be committed and in the space of caring for each other. So yeah, yeah. Thank you, Inarra.
Pleasure. And so
Oh,
we magical women are going to create some magic in the world. My wish for you is that you have the money to do whatever you need to do, like that. There's no oh, it's right to do this with it or wrong to do, or it's none of that. It's no, you've got this nice big pile. May I, make you aware I want a big pile coming in. So that you can also take some time for yourself and do the things. And maybe there'll be a time, I know Jules will see this. So if Jules sees this, get this, Jules, that I know your essence will always be here. But there may be a time when you are not here and we are having this conversation. What an incredible son you're going to create. Now I need the tissues for a son to have gone through this and to be part of this family. I mean, who is he going to be in his generation? He's going to be amazing, like a leader,
yeah.
like a warrior,
Yes. Yes.
passionate warrior man. So,
Absolutely.
you
Yes.
know,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
we're doing it for the other generations as well.
Yes. Very much
Uh,
so.
we
Mhm.
bawled our eyes out when we first spoke, and I said, bring the tissues to this conversation because you can't have this like an interview and be all, straight and normal about it. It's emotional. It's hard to witness it for you. And for you, Jules, also, it's really hard. And I see the shining light in your eyes. I really do. So I hope we can make a big difference. So
Mm,
let's do it.
thank
Thank you so much.
you.
And I'll say goodbye. And I love you.
I love you.
I love you too.